Hi there, and welcome to Steps Together, the Steps for Development podcast, where we come together to learn and build our own skills so that we can help the children in our lives to thrive and succeed. I'm your host, Deb Johnson, and I'm so glad you're here. No matter what your role is in a child's life, you're in the right place to learn about child development and kids who are differently wired. Here, you'll learn about the why behind challenging behaviors, practical strategies that really make a difference, and how to advocate for and support all children as you become empowered with tools and skills that bring lasting change. I want to dive in to what it means to give your child the right kind of support. If you've been listening to my podcast, you have heard that one of the core principles of the Steps for Development approach is being proactive and teaching skills. We're not about managing the behaviors. We are about discovering what lies underneath those behavioral responses, figuring out what skills your child is lacking, lagging in, what are they missing, where do they need the support, and then building those skills. Well, today I want to dig a little deeper into how we build those skills. It's a process called scaffolding. So we want to shift our mindset from controlling behaviors to scaffolding, providing the right supports so that we can teach skills and learn how to be proactive in giving our children the support they need. Because I can guarantee you, being proactive pays much higher dividends than being reactive and always trying to put out the fires and control your child's behaviors. So let's imagine that you're dealing with a child who needs support, needs help for following directions and getting things done. They're a little scattered, they're inattentive, they ignore you. You give them directions, you give them what you think is the right support. You tell them, I need you to go get dressed. Please put on the red sweatshirt and the blue sweatpants. Meet me back in the kitchen for breakfast. They head off, go upstairs, never to be seen again. Or maybe it's bedtime and you tell your child, we're watching one more episode of your favorite cartoon. When this episode is done, we are going to bed. You've done a first then structure. Episode ends, child goes into meltdown mode. Something went wrong. You thought it was the right support, but it just wasn't. Something didn't work. Or what about the situation where you've been using a picture schedule and you've been giving your child a checklist, and it's been working beautifully. And so it was working really well, and you took it away, or the kid stopped using it. And now you're saying, oh my gosh, it's completely fallen apart. Well, maybe the problem is you took away that scaffolding too soon. So what we want to do here is talk about how important it is, why we need to find the right kind of scaffolding, how we can do that a little bit better. And I mostly want to empower you with the knowledge and the skills for how to implement that, for how to figure out what they need and implement the scaffolding and feel like you've got a sense of control over what you're doing to support your child, as opposed to always trying to control your child's behaviors. Now, there are a lot of reasons why scaffolding doesn't work or why an adult doesn't implement the right supports, the right strategy. Sometimes it's because the adult believes that given the child's age, they shouldn't need this amount of support. What I'm telling them is enough, right? Like the fact that a 7-year-old kid should be able to go get dressed by themselves. Well, yeah, a typically developing 7-year-old, yes. But is your child typically developing? If you're listening to this episode, the child who brought you here is probably not typically developing. There's some neurodiversity, there's some kind of neurospiciness, there's some sort of neurodifference that is creating a challenge. And so If we go by chronological age, we are never going to find the right fit for that child. It's even a little more challenging when that child is developmentally all scattered. They're just all over the place in terms of their skill set. Maybe intellectually they're very advanced beyond their chronological age, but from a social emotional regulation standpoint, they're they're a grade or two and a year or two behind where their chronological age is. So we have to account for all of those atypical developments. Another reason why scaffolding might not be used correctly is because we think the child has mastered the skill, and so we take the support away. And this is what I call the blood pressure syndrome, blood pressure medication syndrome. I call it that because I used to work in home health with elderly people. Um, Now I am one of those elderly people on blood pressure medication. And when I would work with those people in the past, you'd go in and you'd check their blood pressure and it would be high. And you'd say, well, have you been taking your medication? And this sweet older person would say to me, no, I haven't been taking the medication because my blood pressure has been fine. Well, your blood pressure was fine because you were taking the medication. And when you go off the medication, it isn't fine. That's the whole reason for the medication. It's a great analogy for why we use a checklist or a picture schedule. The kid's doing great because we're using the picture schedule. And it all falls apart when we stop using it. And then it becomes more challenging because maybe the child was really still counting on, relying on, depending on those supports. So it's really important to consider, why was the child so successful? Were the skills really mastered, or was it a function of the scaffolding that we had in place and we inadvertently, right, not on purpose, we didn't deliberately take it away because we just were being, careless or unthoughtful, but it's because we thought they no longer needed it. And so when they struggle, we know we need to put that back. Another reason why scaffolding might not be used is because you as the adult are simply exhausted. Sometimes this scaffolding, the structure, takes a lot of effort. My goal is always to, number one, keep it simple. I want to kiss it all the time, right? That saying, keep it simple, stupid. And, we just want to keep it simple because things that are too complex don't get followed through with. We don't carry them out. We give up on them too soon. It's very hard to change habits. So we want to change habits and structure and routine incrementally. We want to do it in little bits. And I totally get it. You're exhausted. This is hard work, right? I did an episode about that. I see you working really, really hard, and I want to help you find the easiest ways to support your child for success. That is just such a key. Another reason why we might not be using the right structure or supports, or why they might sort of drop off of our radar momentarily, temporarily, is just because of life stressors, maybe some sort of event that has occurred that's just put everybody off their routine, or it's put you off your routine, and your child depends on you, one person who can put that structure in place for them. Well, the solution to that is to have your support system. Make sure other people know the routine, know the structure that your child needs, know how to implement it. We want to get more than one person on board. There may also be environmental stressors, whether that's at home or at school, at childcare, wherever your child goes for daycare. Maybe it's just outside. Maybe it's things like it's a holiday, and that's just an environmental kind of thing where house looks different and things change. So those are times, or you're on vacation. That's an excellent example. I have people who say, oh, well, we just got back from vacation and we didn't use any of that while we were on vacation. So that can be difficult. It can make vacation challenging, and it makes the transition back into day-to-day life very challenging. So, what does it really mean to scaffold effectively? And why is it such a powerful way to teach skills? Let's dig into this. Let's first define scaffolding. I'm really big on language, and it's important that we all know what this means. The literal definition of scaffolding is a temporary structure built up around a building while it is being repaired or constructed. So that scaffolding, two important parts about this is it's put up around something. It doesn't touch it. It doesn't hold it up. It's put up around it. The other piece that I think is important is that it's temporary, right? Our scaffolding is not meant to be permanent. In some instances, it needs to be. We all use supports. I use calendars. I use paper calendars and digital calendars. I use to-do lists, checklists. That's scaffolding for me. So sometimes scaffolding is permanent. It's a strategy that we use all the time. But when we're talking about building skills, we want that scaffolding to be temporary. Now, when we look at it from an educational or developmental perspective, usually what scaffolding will mean, what a teacher will use this as, and what a therapist is referring to, is where we're breaking things down into manageable steps, and we are providing the right amount of support that is gradually reduced as the child masters the steps. They learn the concepts, they master the skills, and they no longer need the supports. A lot of times in a school setting, a one-on-one aid is very well intentioned, but they are providing too much support. In some cases, they're actually doing things for the child. That's not helpful. The child is always going to need that level of one-on-one support if they're never learning to do it themselves. So I like to borrow from Jean Ayres, who is the OT that developed all of our theories of sensory integration and our sensory integrative treatment approach. And when we are doing SI-based treatment, sensory integration-based treatment, what we're seeking is the just right challenge, where we are giving the child just enough support, but not so much that it takes away the challenge, because the challenge is what's intrinsically motivating. And the challenge, when a child is learning to do a task, the challenge is in the doing. The doing is how they learn. Our brain is wired to learn by experience, right? Watching and listening to directions, those things are helpful. But at the end of it all, our bodies, our nervous systems, our brains learn by doing. So if you're doing it for the child, if you're rescuing them or removing the challenge, that's too much. By the same token, if you find your child isn't successful and you need to give them a little more help, that's not spoiling them. Giving them the support when they are clearly showing you that they are frustrated and upset and they're angered at not being able to do the task, or they're just giving up and they're throwing it away. They're throwing the opportunities. They don't even want to try. You're not spoiling them by giving them more support. The challenge here is to find the just right level of support that intrinsically motivates the child, builds the connection and relationship where they trust you and they know that you're going to be there to help when they need it, but also gives them plenty of opportunity to learn by doing. So we want to be giving this level of scaffolding that promotes learning and confidence and skill growth. And the end result of the just right scaffolding is that you're going to watch your child build new skills. You're going to see them learn that you are there to support, not to control them. And this is going to just infinitely improve your connection and your relationship with your child because they want control of themselves. So you're going to build that relationship that way. And you are going to just be overjoyed at seeing your child's growth and development as they become competent and more confident and independent, which is what we all want for the children that we love and nurture in our lives. So as we are discussing scaffolding, I want to first back up. Now that we know what we're talking about, I want to give you a typical developmental example of scaffolding. Because when we are raising typically developing children, this concept of scaffolding tends to happen very, very naturally, assuming that we as parents are supportive and engaged, and we are encouraging our typically developing children to grow and be independent. A task, let's say, for example, getting dressed, will look like this developmentally. When a child is about 1.5 to 2 years old, the parent is essentially dressing the child, but the child is starting to assist. They're sticking their arms and legs out. They're putting their foot up for you to put their shoe on. They are assisting. And you as the parent might even hold the shoe up in the air and wait for them to put their foot up. You're looking for that reaction. It's a natural way that we scaffold their skill development for getting dressed. As they enter into that 2 to 3-year-old age range, now it starts to become a shared task, this getting dressed. Maybe you help the child put their feet into their pant legs, and then you pull the pants up the rest of the way. And you maybe help with putting the shirt on, but again, you put the head over, right? You put their head through the neck, but then you let them put their arms in the sleeves. Still a lot of assist, but I would say that at this point now, the scaffolding has evolved to being where it's very much a shared activity, a shared task. When a child is about 3 to 4 years old, we're looking at the adult setting up the clothing and the child doing a bit more of the physical piece of the dressing. But at this age, they might get their shirt on backwards or their pants on backwards. They're putting their shoes on the wrong feet. They might struggle with clothes that are a little too tight, or definitely struggling with fasteners at 3 to 4 years old. So you're still providing that assist, but you're letting the child do most of it. And you step back and you allow the child to do as much as they can, right? Ideally. As the child hits 4 to 5 years old, now we might be doing demonstration. We might be giving them a visual setup. We might lay the clothes out in the right way, but we're not actually doing it. We might show the child how to find the design on the front of their t-shirt and put the design down on their bed so that then they can get into their shirt the correct way and it's on facing front. But again, we're not necessarily doing it for them. Even when they come out of their bedroom and they've got their shirt on backwards, you might then show them how to turn it around, right? Again, in an ideal world. When kids hit about 5, 6 years old, now we're pulling way back and we're giving that child some verbal prompts and we're giving them very limited physical help. We might be giving assistance for more complex fasteners, but we're not actually physically dressing them. Again, this is a description of a typically developing child and their progression to go towards independent dressing. By the time they're 7, our normal expectation, our typical expectation is that kids will be independent to get dressed. Now, that's not always true, right? Your mileage may vary with a typically developing child. Some kids are doing it completely independently at 5. Some are maybe not until 8. It just depends. Some are a little slower to manage the buttons or snaps or tying shoes or things like that. But again, in general, this is what it looks like. And I hope with that description, you can see what I mean by scaffolding, that it is adjusted based on the developmental need of the child. It's not on a rigid timeline. It's in response to the child's developmental level. It is not specifically linked to their chronological age. We have expectations, right, for milestones, but we have a lot of flexibility, a lot of variability as to where that development is going to fall. Now, when we're looking at our neurodiverse kids, the kids that are having some developmental challenges, now we have to really look at where are they developmentally and how much support do they need. And one of the challenges, as I mentioned, is finding the right level of developmental support for the particular task. Because these children, excuse me, these children may have a higher need for support, maybe with getting dressed, but be completely independent with making a little snack and feeding themselves. So it's very important that we find the just right challenge for the particular task. I'm sorry, the just right support. I said just right challenge. That's the analogy I'm using. But we want the just right support for the very specific task. And keep in mind that your child may need a lot more support for some activities and a whole lot less for other activities. We want to find the balance between support so they can be successful. This is support for the child to be successful, while we're still giving them enough of a challenge and opportunity to be practicing and learning what they need to be learning in order to raise their level of independence. One of the guidelines that I like to recommend is that we follow this very neurodiversity affirming approach. There's a phrase out there, presume competence. And it's a really great phrase. Let's presume that our child can do it, allow them the opportunity to do it on their own. And when they struggle, if they struggle, that's when we step in. And we only step in based on the level of acceptance that our child gives us. So some children, we want to ask, hey, it looks like you're struggling with your shoes. Oh, looks like you're having a hard time with getting your jacket zipped. Let me know if I can help. Or do you want me to give it a try? You want to try first and tell me when you need help? We want to give them space, right? And again, this will vary from one child to another. There's 2 core goals in the scaffolding that we want to provide our children. And these are consistent with the steps for development approach. The goals I want you to focus on are engagement and empowerment. These are what I call the participation needs that your child has. Engagement is the motivation, attention, they're just the fact that they're physically doing the activity, that they're connected and engaged in it. They are interested in actually doing it. Some kids have 0 interest in brushing their teeth. So you may need to provide scaffolding that ramps up the engagement, right? You need to provide maybe one of their favorite songs in the background that times how long they brush their teeth because they really enjoy that. Or some other technique that's going to increase their motivation to brush their teeth, to do a task that is otherwise not much fun at all. The other piece is empowerment, and this is where we're working on the very, very specific skill building, right? You might absolutely need to scaffold for the skill itself. In some cases, we might have a child, let's say, for example, one of those twice exceptional kids that are really gifted with ADHD. They don't need any scaffolding for the skill of getting dressed. They know how to physically get dressed. That's the empowerment piece, right? But what they do need is absolutely the engagement piece to sustain their attention and to follow through with the task. And you are simultaneously building their executive function skills as you tackle that engagement piece. I just find that when you focus on it that way, when you think about it as I'm trying to build their engagement, it helps you choose the right strategy, like a checklist, a timer, things that are motivating in terms of first, then, like our task sequence, when you focus on it that way. As you choose and implement these supports, this scaffolding, we want to always keep in mind that scaffolding is successful at its core goal of building skills when it is adaptable and flexible, right? Some days they might need more, some days they might need less. As they develop their skills, we want to reduce the level of support that we're giving them to give them more opportunity for learning. We want to keep the supports until we've really seen the mastery. Don't pull it out too soon. And if you have taken out some strategies because your child did demonstrate mastery, and now it seems like they're having a regression, bring the supports back. A lot of times, what looks like regression is not regression at all. It's actually a challenge with meeting the new task demands. It's a challenge because they are getting older and life is changing, and where you expected them to do most of the task by themselves, now you're expecting them to do the entire thing by themselves, or they're expected to initiate it, or there's components that they didn't have to do before. So essentially, the reason they look like they're regressing is because the demands got higher and they need support to meet those higher demands or higher expectations that are going along with their age or their developmental progression. So at the end of it, what I want you to do is to picture scaffolding not as something that looks like what we put around a building as linear, right? We want it to be strong and stable and built around the child, but it's very much going to be curved and dynamic, and it's going to be changing and evolving. So you have to be able to take it apart and put it back together again and be responsive to what it is that your child needs. So what are some of the examples of scaffolding? I've talked about a lot of different strategies. I can't teach you all the strategies you need to know in a podcast episode, but I can certainly give you some ideas, and I hope these will prompt you to think about your own child and a particular activity where you think that you could ramp up the support a little bit. Or maybe you're thinking of something where you should pull back a little bit and your child could actually do more for themselves. So, excuse me. So again, one of the biggest, one of the most common strategies that we use are visual supports. You've probably heard a lot about checklists, picture schedules, visual timers. I love time timer. And so using those kinds of things to whatever degree your child needs it is really, really helpful. If your child is struggling with sequencing, staying on task, following a set of directions, doing an activity that requires multiple steps, the go-to strategy is always a checklist, a picture schedule, some sort of a timer, something where they can check off the steps. And there are so many different ways that you can do this. You can do this with simply pictures drawn on a whiteboard or sketched out on a piece of paper. You can do this with a fancy little folder where there's little strips cut and the child covers up the pictures as they finish them. Or maybe the child takes the pictures off the board and puts them in an envelope or other container when they finish. Um, Maybe it's something like the steps are written or the steps are written on like popsicle sticks. They maybe don't have to be completed in a sequence, but 4 things need to be finished. And you can put those 4 ideas, those 4 tasks on popsicle sticks in a can, and the child just moves them from one to the next as they finish each of those tasks. Or maybe you use those just, 6 popsicle sticks or 6 blocks as counters that the child needs to do the same activity 6 times. And each time they finish it, they move a block or they move a popsicle stick or, they put a penny in a bank. So things like that that are visual that support them. Many of our kids need us to pair visual prompts with verbal information. If you're giving a lot of verbal information and your child is not following the directions or is struggling, please give it a shot. Try some gestures, pointing, bringing physical objects out, showing them, modeling, giving a demonstration. These kinds of things are so very powerful in terms of getting engagement, getting attention, and helping them with the comprehension of what it is that you want them to do. Other ways to support comprehension and follow through would be to adjust our language. So my favorite is simply say less. Use fewer words and make sure that the words you use are clear. If you want a child to do a particular task, stop forming it as a question. It just doesn't help. If you want them to be able to say no, then ask a question. But if you want them to put their shoes on, then you don't want to ask, could you go put your shoes on? You want to just use clear language that says, go put your shoes on. You want to use first then language. First bathroom, and then coat, and then car. We're leaving. These are the steps. These are the things that we're doing. Clear, direct language, clear expectations, language that is in using the vocabulary that the child understands, and language that is as concrete as required. Clean your room is very vague and abstract, but giving the child the direction of pick up all the blocks, that will be more effective. Or maybe you want to ask them, would you like to pick up yellow blocks or blue blocks first? You're not asking if they want to pick up blocks. You're giving them guidance to which blocks to pick up, and you're eliminating that vague, abstract, overwhelming language of clean your room or pick up your toys. That's hard for a little one to understand. Another go-to scaffolding strategy, another category, would be physical assistance and shared participation. So this means things like you try first and then I'll help you. You do the right shoe, I'll do the left. You try this sock, I'll help you with this one. Or you try, and then if you can't get it, I'll do it. This opens up the opportunity for learning and the opportunity for praise. And sometimes I see parents just give a child that direction. Oh, you try first, and then I'll help. And then the child puts on both shoes by themselves. So they were asking maybe more because they wanted connection, not because they really wanted the help. And that is a subtle nuance, right? And sometimes when kids are sad or they're having some big emotions and they ask for your physical help, maybe giving them the help is an okay thing because it supports the connection. It empathizes with them, gives them a little bit of coddling, a little bit of love to let them know that they're safe and secure. Another thing that you can do is to split the task with the child. You do your pants, I'll do your shirt, right? That type of thing. Or maybe it's that you put your coat on, I'll zip it. Or I'll latch the zipper and you pull it up. I'll get it connected at the bottom because that part's hard. But you go ahead and zip your coat all the way up. Maybe all you need to do for shoes is make sure that you get them set up right and left on the correct sides just to support your child putting them on. Or maybe you have an older child that struggles with writing and your child needs to dictate and you'll write it out. Don't do it for them. Write down word for word what they're saying for their homework. But taking the dictation for them can be an excellent accommodation that allows your child who struggles with writing to get their thoughts out without the added barrier of the physical task of doing the writing. So as you can see, finding the right scaffolding is definitely an art and a science. It's very nuanced, and it does require observation, patience, and problem solving. The Steps for Development approach facilitates this. We teach how to look at your child's strengths, look at your child's challenges, and what are their regulation needs. And then we want to use that escape framework, right? ESCAPE, which helps us to analyze the specific task. What are the expectations, the social factors? What's the cognitive communication issues? What are the affective or emotional factors involved in this? What are the physical demands and the environmental concerns? When we use that to analyze a task, it helps us to problem solve using the child's strengths to find the right support that we want to put up as the scaffolding. When you're using strengths to set up and build this scaffolding, you are going to be more likely to presume competence and use the least restrictive approach first, which is ideal. We can always add in, but if we dive in and do too much for the child, they may really start to feel like you're just controlling them and they may shut down and they may stop trying. They're not even engaged in participating. We want to pull from their existing skill set and choose a support that fits the particular situation. Motivate them by using their interests, their passions, their obsessions, right? Use those things that get them engaged and intrinsically motivated to practice a skill that may be very challenging for them. And when a child is able, we want to engage them in cooperative problem solving, right? This is the core of Ross Green's collaborative and proactive solutions model that we want to ask the child, what does support look like? How can I help you? How much do you want me to do? How much do you want me to stand back? That's really important to give the child that respect, again, when it is developmentally appropriate. I want you to remember to focus on the process of developing this scaffolding and implementing it. Scaffolding is not a quick fix. It's not controlling the behavior. It's not stopping the meltdown. It in the moment. What it will do is eliminate the meltdowns down the road, because what you're doing is you're building a strong foundation. You're helping your child to build the skills so that then they don't get to that point of that frustration. You're connecting and engaging with them. You're building that relationship. You're helping them grow. You're giving them that sense of safety and security so that those big emotions are going to pop up far less frequently. And you're going to see their skills develop and their independence blossom. So, wrapping up for today, remember that scaffolding is our secret weapon. It's our powerful tool that is going to teach skills and let us get away from controlling behaviors. It needs to be flexible and individualized and developmentally appropriate. So I'm not going to be able to tell you right now exactly what's going to work for your child. I want you to leave this podcast, this episode, feeling empowered to take a look at your unique child and pick one task that's been a struggle and step back and observe what's going on here. Where is my child having difficulty? Go back and use that escape acronym to look at all the different things that might be affecting that particular task. And then that should help you to say, oh, I need to back off on my expectations. I'm expecting my child to do too much. I need to do a bit more of the steps, or I need to offer more assistance and support. Or maybe you've noticed that your child physically just can't. They don't have the strength to push their feet into their shoes. So they can go get their shoes and they can help open and close the Velcro on their shoes, but they need physical assistance for that piece of getting their heel into their shoe, right? I want you to be that observant and break it down that much. Presume competency and let your child have as much control as possible. So it's that balance. Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? And look at the task to really question not what is your child doing or not doing, not what is their behavior during the task, but what can I, as their support, do differently? How can I change this so that they are successful and down the road independent to do this, and those meltdowns disappear? Remember, skill building takes partnership and patience with our neurodiverse kids. Effective scaffolding is going to turn struggle into progress. And you are going to be so thrilled to see your child grow and succeed. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate that you're here, that you want to learn, that you want to grow your own skills, and that you are ready for a mindset shift to do something different, to stop the power struggles, to stop trying to control all of those behaviors, and to start supporting your child in a way that is going to bring lasting change. If you've enjoyed these podcasts and you know somebody else that would benefit from them, please spread the word, share the podcast, follow me on social media, encourage others to join us, sign up for the newsletter, and stay in touch with me. Reach out, let me know about your successes. I'd love to hear what's going on in your lives. And if you'd like some one-on-one support, let me know. I'm here to offer that support through parent coaching and guiding you through the steps for development approach. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.